Captain Marcus Chen pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation deck, watching the alien creatures struggle in the wreckage below. The massive beast was trapped beneath twisted steel beams from what remained of a Zephyrian transport vessel. Its dark purple hide glistened with a substance that might have been blood, and its 6 powerful legs kicked frantically against the debris. "Sir, we should leave it," came the voice of his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "The distress beacon indicates this was a prisoner transport. That thing down there was probably being shipped to an execution facility." Marcus studied the creature more carefully. It stood nearly 3 meters tall with a serpentine neck that ended in a head sporting 4 intelligent amber eyes. Razor-sharp spines ran down its back, and its mouth revealed rows of teeth that could easily tear through hull plating. Everything about it screamed predator, yet something in those eyes spoke of pain beyond the physical. The Zephyrians classify anything that breathes differently than them as a criminal, Marcus replied, pulling on his environmental suit. "Remember the Centauri incident? They were going to execute an entire species for the crime of photosynthesis. The creature's struggles were growing weaker. Marcus could see that one of the steel beams had punctured its side, creating a wound that pulsed with each labored breath. Time was running out. "Captain, that's a Drakmor Ravager," Kim insisted, her voice tight with concern. "They're listed as one of the most dangerous species in this sector. The Galactic Council has standing orders to eliminate them on sight." Marcus paused at the airlock door. He had heard the stories about Drakmor Ravagers. They were said to be unstoppable killing machines, capable of tearing through entire colonies in a matter of hours. But as he watched the trapped creature, all he could see was a living being in desperate need of help. "Maybe the stories are wrong," he said quietly. "Maybe they're just defending themselves against the Zephyrian expansion." The creature's head turned toward the human ship, and for a moment its 4 eyes locked onto Marcus through the observation window. There was no rage in that gaze, no promise of violence. Instead, Marcus saw something that looked remarkably like hope. He activated his suit's life support systems and stepped into the airlock. "Kim, prepare the medical bay and have Dr. Rodriguez standing by." "I'm going down there. Sir, I cannot recommend this course of action. The risk to crew safety is unacceptable." Marcus smiled grimly as the outer airlock door hissed open. "Since when do we humans take the safe path, Lieutenant?" The planetary surface was a hellscape of twisted metal and toxic atmosphere. The Zephyrian transport had crashed during what appeared to be a prisoner transfer gone wrong. Scattered around the wreckage were the remains of several Zephyrian guards, their energy weapons still clutched in their clawed hands. As Marcus approached the trapped creature, he could hear its breathing becoming more labored. The amber eyes tracked his movement, but the beast made no aggressive moves. Instead, it seemed to recognize that this small human was its only chance for survival. "Easy there, big guy," Marcus whispered into his comm, knowing the creature couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone would convey peaceful intentions. "I'm here to help." The steel beam pinning the creature was massive, easily weighing several tons. Marcus activated his suit's exoskeleton amplifiers, feeling the mechanical muscles engage along his arms and legs. Even with the technological assistance, moving the beam would require every ounce of strength he possessed. He positioned himself at the optimal leverage point and began to lift. The beam groaned but didn't budge. Sweat began to bead on Marcus's forehead as he strained against the unyielding metal. The creature watched him with those intelligent eyes, and Marcus could swear he saw understanding there. "Come on," he grunted, redirecting power from his suit's other systems to the exoskeleton. "Work with me here." On his 3rd attempt, the beam shifted slightly. The creature immediately recognized the opportunity and began pushing with its uninjured legs, adding its considerable strength to Marcus's efforts. Together, human and alien managed to create enough space for the beast to pull itself free. The moment it was clear of the wreckage, the creature collapsed onto its side, dark fluid seeping from the puncture wound. Marcus quickly activated his suit's emergency medical protocols, dispensing universal coagulants and pain suppressors from his kit. "This is going to sting," he warned, though he knew the creature couldn't understand. He applied the coagulant directly to the wound, and the beast let out a low rumble that somehow didn't sound threatening. As Marcus worked to stabilize the creature's condition, he noticed something remarkable. Despite being in obvious pain and having every reason to be aggressive, the alien remained perfectly still, allowing the human to tend to its injuries. It was almost as if it understood that Marcus was trying to help. "Kim, I need an immediate medical transport, Marcus called into his comm, and tell Rodriguez to prep for xenobiological surgery. We're bringing our new friend aboard. Captain, are you insane? That creature could kill everyone on the ship. Marcus looked into those 4 amber eyes again and saw something that made his decision easy. No, Kim, I don't think it will. In fact, I think we just made ourselves the most loyal friend in the galaxy. The creature's head moved slightly, and Marcus felt a gentle touch against his gloved hand. One of the beast's smaller appendages had reached out to make contact, and in that moment Marcus knew he had made the right choice. This was no mindless predator. This was an intelligent being capable of gratitude and perhaps even friendship. As the medical transport descended from his ship, Marcus wondered what kind of future awaited them. He had just rescued one of the galaxy's most feared creatures, and somehow he suspected this was only the beginning of an extraordinary partnership that would change everything he thought he knew about the universe. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had performed surgery on dozens of alien species during her career, but nothing had prepared her for the complexity of Drakmor physiology. The creature, which Marcus had started calling Keth after the rumbling sound it made when content, possessed a cardiovascular system unlike anything in the medical databases. Fascinating, Elena murmured as she worked within the sterile confines of the medical bay. It has 3 hearts, and its blood contains metallic compounds that actually strengthen under stress. Marcus watched from the observation window as his medical officer worked to repair the damage caused by the steel beam. Keth remained remarkably calm throughout the procedure, its 4 eyes occasionally tracking the movements of the medical team. The sedatives Elena had administered should have rendered any creature unconscious, yet Keth seemed to maintain a state of relaxed awareness. "Captain," came Lieutenant Kim's voice over the intercom, "we're receiving transmission from Zephyrian Command. They're demanding we return their prisoner." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. What's their legal basis for the demand? They claim Keth is a war criminal responsible for the destruction of 3 Zephyrian colonies. They're threatening to classify us as enemy combatants if we don't comply. Through the medical bay window, Marcus watched as Keth's head turned toward the sound of his voice. Even under sedation, the creature seemed to recognize him as the one who had provided aid. It was difficult to reconcile this gentle giant with the savage destroyer described in Zephyrian reports. "Dr. Rodriguez, how much longer until our patient is stable?" Elena looked up from her work, her face flushed with concentration. "The wound is healing remarkably fast. Drakmor tissue appears to have regenerative properties I've never encountered. Give me another hour, and Keth should be fully mobile." "Sir." Kim's voice carried a note of urgency. "The Zephyrian fleet is moving to intercept us. 3 heavy cruisers estimated arrival in 6 hours. Marcus made his decision. Set course for the neutral zone. Maximum speed. As the ship's engines engaged, Marcus noticed Keth's reaction to the sudden acceleration. Instead of the distress most patients would show, the creature seemed to understand they were fleeing. Its eyes found Marcus through the observation window, and it made that low rumbling sound that had earned it its temporary name. "Elena, I need you to run a complete neurological scan," Marcus said, entering the medical bay. "I want to know exactly how intelligent our friend here really is." The scan results were extraordinary. Keth's brain structure was not only complex but showed patterns of neural activity that suggested advanced reasoning capabilities. The creature possessed multiple lobes dedicated to pattern recognition, spatial awareness, and what appeared to be empathic response. "Captain, these readings indicate a level of intelligence comparable to most spacefaring species," Elena reported. "The emotional processing centers are particularly well developed. This creature is capable of complex feelings, including gratitude and loyalty." As if responding to their discussion, Keth carefully lifted its head and fixed its gaze on Marcus. The creature made a series of soft sounds different from its usual rumble. Elena's universal translator struggled with the vocalizations before offering a tentative interpretation. Roughly translated, it seems to be saying "friend who lifts metal." The linguistic structure suggests a highly sophisticated communication system. Marcus stepped closer to Keth's recovery bed. "Can you understand us, friend?" Keth's response was immediate. It lifted one of its smaller appendages and gently touched Marcus's hand, the same gesture it had made on the planet's surface. The touch was warm and unmistakably deliberate. "Elena, how soon can you modify our translation matrix to accommodate Drakmor vocalizations?" Give me access to the ship's quantum processors, and I can have a working translation system within hours. As Elena worked on the translation matrix, Marcus found himself spending more time in the medical bay. Keth seemed to recognize him not just as a rescuer, but as something more significant. The creature's eyes would track Marcus's movements with an intensity that spoke of genuine affection. When the translation system came online, the first words they heard from Keth were ones that would change everything. "Friend Marcus," the synthesized voice spoke with careful precision. "Keth knows debt of life. Keth will guard friend Marcus until final breath." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine.
"Keth, you don't owe me anything."
"I helped because it was the right thing to do." "Friend Marcus does not understand," Keth replied, its four eyes showing what could only be described as patience. In Drakmor way, life debt is sacred bond. Keth was death chosen by Metal Beam. Friend Marcus gave life choosing back to Keth. Now Keth is bound guardian until debt payment complete. Elena looked at Marcus with concern. "Captain, I think what Keth is describing sounds like a permanent obligation. A life debt that can only be repaid by saving your life in return. That's unnecessary. Keth, I don't want you to feel obligated to me." Keth's response carried an emotional weight that the translation system struggled to convey. "Not obligation, friend Marcus, honor. Drakmor who cannot pay life debt is no longer Drakmor. Keth chooses to be guardian friend." The medical bay's alarm suddenly activated as Lieutenant Kim's voice echoed through the ship. "Captain, to the bridge immediately. The Zephyrian fleet has launched pursuit fighters and they're gaining fast." Marcus looked at Keth, who was already attempting to rise from the recovery bed despite Elena's protests. "I have to go handle this. You need to rest and recover. Friend Marcus goes to face danger without guardian friend." Keth's synthesized voice carried clear distress. "This is not acceptable choice. You're injured and in no condition to fight." Keth managed to pull itself upright, towering over both humans even while clearly weakened. "Drakmor heal fast when purpose clear. Keth's purpose is guardian duty to friend Marcus." Elena ran a quick scan and shook her head in amazement. "Captain, its healing rate has actually accelerated. Tissue regeneration is occurring at 3 times the normal rate. It's almost as if having a purpose to fulfill is triggering enhanced recovery." Marcus realized he was witnessing something profound. This wasn't just gratitude or even friendship. Keth had formed a bond with him that transcended species barriers. The creature was literally healing faster because it had someone to protect. "All right, Keth," Marcus said, making another decision that would alter the course of their lives. "If you're determined to be my guardian, then let's go face this challenge together. But you follow my orders, understood?" Keth's response was a deep rumble of satisfaction. "Guardian friend understands. Keth will follow friend Marcus' orders until life debt fulfilled." As they headed for the bridge together, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if he had just gained the most loyal ally in the galaxy, or if he had unknowingly bound himself to a creature whose concept of life debt might last far longer than he could imagine. The bridge fell silent as Marcus and Keth entered together. Every crew member turned to stare at the massive Drakmor, whose presence seemed to fill the entire command center. Lieutenant Kim's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm before Marcus raised a calming gesture. "Crew, meet Keth, our newest ally," Marcus announced with authority.
"Keth, these are my people."
"They are under my protection, which means they are under yours as well." Keth's 4 eyes swept across the bridge crew, taking in each face with careful attention. "Friend Marcus people are Keth-protected people," the creature declared through the translation system. "Guardian duty extends to all friend Marcus values." Lieutenant Kim looked uncomfortable but kept her composure. "Captain, the Zephyrian fighters are closing fast. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding immediate surrender." Marcus moved to the command chair, with Keth positioning itself slightly behind and to the right, where it could observe both the captain and any potential threats. The arrangement felt natural, as if they had been working together for years rather than hours. "Show me the tactical display," Marcus ordered. The main screen illuminated with the positions of 3 Zephyrian pursuit fighters, sleek vessels armed with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. Marcus's cargo ship, the Wanderer's Dream, was built for speed and efficiency, not combat. "Sir, they're demanding we prepare to be boarded," reported Communications Officer Torres. "They say they'll consider not charging us with harboring a fugitive if we surrender Keth immediately. Options, Kim?" "We could reach the neutral zone in 30 minutes, but they'll catch us in 15. Our shields won't hold against concentrated fire from 3 fighters. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. Beside him, Keth made a series of soft clicking sounds that the translator interpreted as thoughtful consideration. "Friend Marcus," Keth said suddenly. Keth knows Zephyrian fight patterns. Keth has survived many hunt packs. You've fought them before? Keth has defended home territory from Zephyrian expansion fleets. Zephyrian fighters use pack hunting formation. They attack in sequence, not together. Makes them predictable. Marcus looked at his massive companion with new respect. Can you help us get out of this? Keth can guide friend Marcus' ship through danger pattern, but Wanderer's ship must do exactly as Keith instructs. Lieutenant Kim stepped forward, her voice tight with concern. Captain, with respect, we're talking about putting our lives in the hands of a creature we met less than 12 hours ago. Marcus watched Keth's reaction to Kim's words. The Drakmoor's expression showed no offense, only understanding. Lieutenant speaks truth, concern, Keth said calmly. Keth is unknown quantity to friend Marcus people. But Keth has guardian debt. Keth would choose death before failure to protect friend Marcus. The sincerity in the translated words was unmistakable. Marcus made his choice. Keth, we're putting our trust in you. What do you need us to do? First fighter will attack from port above angle in attempt to disable engines. Wanderer ship must drop dive at Keth signal, then turn hard to starboard. Second fighter will expect evasion left, will overshoot target. And the third fighter? Keth's eyes gleamed with what might have been satisfaction. Third fighter will attempt pincer movement from below. This is when Wanderer ship shows Zephyrian hunters why human ships are fear-worthy. Marcus took his position at the helm controls. All hands prepare for evasive maneuvers. This is going to get rough. The first Zephyrian fighter approached exactly as Keith had predicted, its plasma cannons charging for a disabling shot at their engines. Now, friend Marcus, Keth called out. Marcus threw the ship into a steep dive, feeling the artificial gravity system strain against the sudden acceleration. The Zephyrian fighters' shots passed harmlessly over their position as they executed a sharp turn to starboard. Second fighter moving to intercept, Torres reported. They're adjusting for our maneuver. They adjust for expected pattern, Keth explained. But humans do not follow expected patterns. Friend Marcus, engage full thrust toward second fighter. That's insane, Kim protested. We'll be flying straight into their weapons range. Trust the plan, Marcus said, pushing the engines to maximum power. The Wanderer's Dream shot forward like a missile, heading directly toward the second Zephyrian fighter. Zephyrian expects retreat or evasion, Keth said with something resembling pleasure. Human aggression confuses their tactical programming. The second fighter's pilot clearly hadn't expected their prey to charge directly at them. The Zephyrian vessel attempted to adjust its firing solution, but the closing speed was too great for accurate targeting. Marcus pulled the ship into a barrel roll at the last second, passing so close to the fighter that their shields actually touched. The third fighter is moving into position below us, Torres called out. They're trying to cut off our escape route. Perfect position for Wanderer surprise, Keth said. Friend Marcus, does ship have emergency dump for cargo bay? Marcus suddenly understood Keth's plan. We're carrying a load of industrial oxygen tanks. If we vent them all at once, oxygen plus plasma fire equals expansion explosion, Keth confirmed. Zephyrian fighter will be caught in pressure wave. Do it, Marcus ordered. Emergency dump, all cargo. The Wanderer's Dream released its entire cargo hold contents directly above the third fighter. Dozens of oxygen tanks tumbled through space, creating a cloud of highly combustible material. When the Zephyrian pilot fired his plasma cannons, the explosion was spectacular. The third fighter was caught in the blast wave, its shields overloading and its engines stuttering. The ship spun out of control, no longer a threat. Brilliant, Marcus breathed, looking at Keth with amazement. How did you know that would work? Drakmoor survived by understanding environment advantage, Keth replied. Every ship holds can become weapon if used with wisdom thinking. The remaining two Zephyrian fighters had regrouped and were approaching more cautiously, clearly recognizing that their prey was more dangerous than anticipated. They will try coordinated attack now, Keth warned. Both fighters together, maximum firepower. Can we outrun them to the neutral zone? Not with direct pursuit, but Keth knows asteroid field nearby. Zephyrian large ships cannot follow, and fighters lose advantage formation in tight spaces. Marcus checked the navigation display and spotted the asteroid field Keth was referring to. It was a chaotic maze of tumbling rocks, some as large as small moons. That's suicide. The navigation hazards alone. For Zephyrian pilots, yes, Keth agreed. But friend Marcus has Drakmor navigator friend. Keth has flown asteroid mazes when escaping hunt packs. Looking into those 4 intelligent amber eyes, Marcus realized that Keth wasn't just offering tactical advice. The creature was offering to stake its own life on getting them to safety. The life debt wasn't just words to Keth. It was a sacred promise. "All right, my friend," Marcus said, adjusting course toward the asteroid field. "Guide us home." As the Wanderer's Dream plunged into the dangerous maze of tumbling rocks, with Keth calling out navigation instructions and the Zephyrian fighters falling further behind, Marcus realized that he had gained something far more valuable than an ally. He had found a partner whose loyalty and wisdom would prove invaluable in the adventures that lay ahead. 3 months had passed since the escape from the Zephyrian fighters, and the partnership between Marcus and Keth had grown stronger with each shared adventure. The crew of the Wanderer's Dream had gradually accepted their unusual companion, particularly after Keth had saved them from pirates, helped negotiate a profitable trade deal with the Sigma Collective, and even assisted Dr. Rodriguez in developing new medical techniques using Drakmor healing principles. Now they found themselves in the Kepler 442 system, investigating reports of an ancient alien artifact that could potentially revolutionize faster-than-light travel. Marcus should have known that anything too good to be true usually was. "Captain, we've got company," Lieutenant Kim announced from her position at the sensor station. Zephyrian dreadnought just dropped out of hyperspace. "It's the Vindictive Storm." Marcus felt his blood chill. The Vindictive Storm was Admiral Scarth's flagship, a massive warship known for its ruthless pursuit of enemies and its commander's complete lack of mercy. Somehow the Zephyrians had tracked them down. "They're hailing us," Torres reported, his voice tight with worry. On screen, Admiral Scarth's reptilian features filled the main display, his cold eyes and scarred face radiating menace. "Captain Chen, you have harbored a war criminal for far too long. Surrender the Drakmor beast immediately, or I will reduce your pathetic vessel to constituent atoms." Marcus glanced at Keth, who stood calmly beside his chair. The Drakmor's 4 eyes showed no fear, only a quiet determination that Marcus had come to recognize as his friend's battle-ready state. "Admiral Scarth, Keth is under the protection of the Earth Colonial Authority. Any action against this vessel will be considered an act of war." Scarth's laugh was like breaking glass. "Your Earth Authority has no jurisdiction here, human. This is Zephyrian space, and I am judge and executioner. You have 30 seconds to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Marcus looked at the tactical display, knowing that the Wanderer's Dream stood no chance against a dreadnought. They needed to run, but Scarth had already deployed fighter screens to cut off their escape routes. "Friend Marcus," Keth said quietly. Keth knows Admiral Scarth. He led raids against Drakmor home colonies, killed many innocents. "We'll figure out another way to handle this," Marcus replied. "I'm not turning you over to that butcher. Scarth will not accept alternative choices. He hunts Keth for personal honor, not justice." Marcus was about to respond when the ship suddenly shuddered under weapons fire. "Shields down to 60%, Kim reported. "They're not giving us the full 30 seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Marcus ordered, but he knew it was futile. The dreadnought's firepower was overwhelming, and their shields were already buckling under the assault. "Friend Marcus," Keth said urgently, "there is escape path, but dangerous choice required. What do you need?" "Planet below has thick atmosphere and magnetic storms. Zephyrian sensors cannot track through interference, but crash landing on surface will damage Wanderer's ship badly." Marcus looked at the swamp-covered world spinning beneath them. The planet was classified as marginally habitable, with a toxic atmosphere and hostile ecosystem. It wasn't exactly an ideal refuge. How long could we survive down there? Keth can survive in most environments. Friend Marcus' people will need environment suits and shelter construction. Another barrage of weapons fire rocked the ship, and sparks flew from several control panels. "Shields down to 20%, Kim called out. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 5. Marcus made his decision. "All hands prepare for emergency planetary landing. Secure all loose equipment and activate crash positions." As the Wanderer's Dream began its descent toward the planet's surface, Scarth's voice crackled over the communications system. "Running will only delay the inevitable, Chen. I will find you on that worthless swamp world, and when I do, I will make you watch as I execute your pet monster. The atmospheric entry was brutal. The ship's heat shields glowed white-hot as they plunged through the thick atmosphere, while magnetic storms played havoc with their navigation systems. Marcus fought to maintain control as the ship bucked and rolled like a wild animal. Surface approaching fast, Kim reported. I'm reading solid ground about 2 kilometers ahead, but we're coming in too steep. Keth, any suggestions? Swamp water will cushion impact better than solid ground. Aim for deepest marsh area. Marcus adjusted their trajectory toward a vast expanse of dark water dotted with strange, twisted trees. The landing was going to be rough no matter what, but water was definitely preferable to solid rock. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire ship. Marcus felt his restraints strain against his body as the Wanderer's dream plowed through the swamp water, uprooting alien vegetation and sending clouds of mud and debris into the air. When the ship finally came to rest, half submerged in murky water, the bridge was filled with the acrid smell of burned electronics. Damage report, Marcus called out, shaking his head to clear the ringing in his ears. Main engines offline, Kim reported. Life support functioning but running on backup power. Communications array is completely destroyed. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the internal comm. Medical bay reporting. We've got several injured crew members, but nothing life-threatening. However, our medical supplies are scattered, and some equipment is damaged. Marcus looked around the darkened bridge, illuminated only by emergency lighting. Through the cracked main view screen, he could see the alien swamp stretching endlessly in all directions. Strange sounds echoed through the humid air, suggesting that they were not alone on this world. Keth, what's our situation? The Drakmor had suffered no apparent injury from the crash, its robust physiology allowing it to weather impacts that would have seriously hurt a human. Swamp environment is suitable for Keth's survival, but friend Marcus people will face challenges. Water is acidic mild, air has toxin traces, and native creatures may be territorial. How long before Scarth finds us? Admiral Scarth is patient hunter. He will establish orbital blockade and send search teams. Magnetic storms provide concealment for short time only. Marcus stood up, feeling the weight of responsibility for his crew. 23 people were depending on him to get them safely off this hostile world, while a vengeful Zephyrian admiral hunted them from above. All right, people, he announced over the ship's intercom. We're stranded, but we're not beaten. We'll need to secure the ship, establish a defensible perimeter, and figure out how to get word to the colonial authority. As if to emphasize the hostile nature of their new environment, something large splashed in the water outside the ship, followed by a sound that could only be described as a predatory roar. The crew members on the bridge exchanged nervous glances. Friend Marcus, Keth said, its 4 eyes studying the alien landscape beyond the view screen. Keth will protect friend Marcus and crew people while on dangerous world. Guardian Dead extends to all survival needs. Marcus placed a hand on his alien friend's powerful shoulder, feeling the warmth and strength beneath the purple hide. I know you will, Keth. Together we'll get through this. Outside the damaged ship, the alien swamp stretched endlessly under a sky filled with roiling storm clouds. Somewhere above those clouds, Admiral Scarth was organizing his search, determined to claim his prize. But down in the murky waters of an alien world, a human captain and his Drakmor guardian were preparing to face whatever challenges awaited them, bound together by loyalty and friendship that transcended the boundaries of species. The first night in the alien swamp was a nightmare of strange sounds and unseen threats. Marcus stood watch on the partially submerged bridge, his environmental suit sensors detecting movement in the murky waters around their crashed ship. Beside him, Keth remained motionless, its 4 eyes scanning the darkness with predatory focus. Movement approaching from the northeast, Dr. Rodriguez whispered over the comm from her position in the medical bay. Something large, maybe 30 meters out. Marcus peered through the cracked view screen but could see nothing beyond the twisted shapes of alien vegetation. The planet's 3 moons cast an eerie blue-green light through the perpetual storm clouds, creating shifting shadows that could hide any number of threats. Keth, what are we dealing with? The Drakmor's head tilted slightly, its sensitive hearing picking up sounds beyond human perception. Marsh stalkers, Keth replied through the translation system. Pack hunters, intelligent, cunning. They test new arrivals for weakness signs. As if summoned by Keth's words, a creature emerged from the water near the ship's stern, It stood nearly 2 meters tall on 4 muscular legs with a serpentine body covered in algae green scales. Its head was essentially one massive jaw filled with needle-sharp teeth, and 6 small eyes provided it with panoramic vision. Jesus. Lieutenant Kim breathed from her position at the weapons console. How many of them are there? Pack size usually 12 to 15 individuals, Kath answered. They circle prey, test defenses, look for escape routes to block. More shapes began emerging from the swamp, their eyes reflecting the moonlight like scattered emeralds. Marcus counted at least 10 of the creatures, with more ripples in the water suggesting additional pack members were still hidden. Can we scare them off? Marsh stalkers respect strength display only. Weakness showing brings feeding frenzy. Marcus activated the ship's external lighting array, flooding the area around the Wanderer's dream with brilliant white light. Several of the creatures hissed and retreated slightly, but they didn't flee. Instead, they began moving in a coordinated pattern, circling the ship like sharks around wounded prey. They're learning our position and defensive capabilities, Marcus realized. This is reconnaissance for a larger attack. The largest of the visible stalkers, probably the pack leader, moved closer to the ship's hull. It reared up on its hind legs, bringing its head level with the bridge windows, and released a sound that was part roar, part shriek. The other pack members responded with similar calls, creating a cacophony that echoed across the swamp. They're calling for reinforcements, Keth said grimly. Multiple packs will gather for large prey. Must establish dominance display now or face overwhelming numbers. Marcus understood what his friend was suggesting, but the risk was enormous. Keth, you're still recovering from your injuries, and if something happens to you out there... Friend Marcus, Keth is guardian protector. This is purpose moment. The Drakmor moved toward the emergency airlock. Marsh stalkers understand pack hierarchy. Keth must show that friend Marcus' pack has alpha protector. Before Marcus could protest further, Keth activated the airlock and stepped into the toxic atmosphere of the alien world. The Drakmor's natural physiology allowed it to process the planet's hostile environment, giving it a crucial advantage over both the humans and the native predators. The moment Keth emerged from the ship, the entire pack of marsh stalkers fell silent. The large alpha that had been challenging them froze in place, its 6 eyes fixed on this new threat. Keth stood at its full height, nearly 3 meters of muscle and natural weaponry, and released a sound that Marcus had never heard before. It was deeper than a roar, more resonant than a growl. The sound seemed to vibrate through the water, the ship's hull, and even the bones of everyone listening. It was a challenge that transcended species barriers, a declaration of dominance that every predator in the swamp could understand. The alpha marsh stalker's response was immediate and telling. Instead of attacking, it slowly lowered itself into a submissive posture, its head dropping below the level of its shoulders. One by one, the other pack members followed suit, acknowledging Keth as the apex predator in their territory. Incredible, Dr. Rodriguez whispered. Keth just established territorial dominance without a single act of violence. But Keth wasn't finished. The Drakmor moved through the water with surprising grace, approaching each marsh stalker individually. To Marcus's amazement, Keth seemed to be communicating with them, using a combination of postures, sounds, and even gentle physical contact. What's it doing? Kim asked. Marcus watched in fascination as Keth continued its interaction with the native predators. I think Keth is recruiting them, forming an alliance. When Keth returned to the ship 20 minutes later, the marsh stalkers had dispersed, but Marcus noticed that several remained nearby, no longer acting as threats, but as sentries. They had gained a protective perimeter of apex predators. Friend Marcus, Keth said as it re-entered the bridge. Marsh stalkers understand territory agreement. They guard against other threats in exchange for hunting rights in distant areas. You negotiated a treaty with them? Drakmor way is cooperation when possible, dominance when necessary. Pack leaders respect strength, but they also understand mutual benefit. Over the following days, the arrangement proved its worth repeatedly. The marsh stalkers warned them of approaching dangers, from aggressive plant-like creatures that could digest metal to massive underground worms that created sinkholes without warning. In return, Keth helped them identify new hunting grounds and even assisted in taking down particularly dangerous prey that threatened the entire ecosystem. Meanwhile, the crew of the Wanderer's Dream worked to repair their ship and establish a more permanent base of operations. The swamp provided some resources, but many critical components would need to be fabricated from salvaged materials. Environmental suits are holding up well, Dr. Rodriguez reported during their daily briefing. The acidic water is manageable, and we found several edible plant species that can supplement our emergency rations. Lieutenant Kim looked up from her engineering reports. Bad news is that the main engines are completely destroyed. We'll need major components that we simply don't have access to on this world. Marcus nodded grimly. They had managed to establish basic survival, but escape remained a distant hope. Above them, Admiral Scarth's forces continued their systematic search, dropping probe drones and conducting low-altitude reconnaissance flights. "How long before they find us?" Marcus asked. "The magnetic storms are weakening," Kim replied. "Our sensor masking won't last more than another week, maybe 2 at most." That evening, as Marcus stood watch while the rest of the crew slept, he found himself wondering if they would ever see home again. The alien swamp had become a prison as much as a refuge, and time was running out. Keth joined him at the observation post, its massive presence somehow comforting in the hostile environment. "Friend Marcus carries worry burden, just thinking about our options. They're getting fewer every day. Keth has learned much about swamp environment. There may be escape path that Zephyrian hunters have not considered." Marcus looked at his friend with renewed hope. "What do you mean?" "Marsh stalkers speak of deep caves beneath swamp floor, ancient tunnel systems that connect to underground rivers, water paths that lead to distant oceans. Could we use those tunnels to reach the planetary communication array? It's on the other side of the continent, but if we could get a message to the colonial authority, journey would be dangerous extreme. Tunnel dwellers are different from marsh surface creatures. Some are territorial aggressive, others are simply hostile to all life." Marcus considered the risks. It was a desperate plan, but desperate situations called for desperate measures. How long would the journey take? Perhaps 7 planetary days if no major obstacles encountered. But friend Marcus must understand. If journey attempted, Keth cannot guarantee safe return for all crew people. Looking out at the alien swamp that had become their temporary home, Marcus realized that their comfortable alliance with the marsh stalkers had been just the first test. The real challenge lay ahead, in the dark tunnels beneath the swamp, where Keth's protection would be the only thing standing between them and creatures that had never learned to fear anything at all. The entrance to the underground tunnel system was a jagged opening in the swamp floor, partially concealed by the gnarled roots of massive alien trees. Marcus stared into the darkness, knowing that this descent represented their only chance of reaching the planetary communication array before Admiral Scarth's forces located their crash site. "Final equipment check," Lieutenant Kim announced, her voice tense with apprehension. "Emergency rations for 10 days, portable water purification units, backup power cells for environmental suits, and every weapon we could salvage from the ship." Marcus had made the difficult decision to take only a small team into the tunnels. Dr. Rodriguez would remain with the Wanderer's Dream to continue repairs and care for the injured crew members, while Torres and 3 other volunteers would maintain their alliance with the marsh stalkers and provide cover for their eventual return. "Keth, are you certain about this route?" The Drakmor stood at the tunnel entrance, its 4 eyes adapted to see clearly in the absolute darkness below. "Marsh stalker pack leader has confirmed tunnel path. Ancient waters flow beneath swamp floor toward distant ocean. Communication array lies above tunnel exit point. And the dangers? Unknown complete," Keth admitted. "Tunnel dwellers evolved in isolation environment. Some may be territorial aggressive, others may be environmental hazards. Keth can sense danger but cannot predict all possibilities." Marcus checked his weapon one final time and activated his suit's enhanced lighting system. The small team consisted of himself, Kim, Chief Engineer Walsh, and Communications Specialist Petrov. 4 humans and 1 Drakmor against whatever lurked in the ancient darkness below. The descent was treacherous. The tunnel walls were slick with moisture and covered in a bioluminescent fungus that provided an eerie blue-green glow. The air was thick with spores and strange chemical compounds that made their environmental suits work overtime to provide breathable atmosphere. "Temperatures dropping," Walsh reported, his breath visible even inside his helmet. "We're about 50 meters down and it's getting close to freezing." Keth moved ahead of the group, its natural senses providing early warning of potential threats. The Drakmor's feet found purchase on surfaces that would have sent the humans tumbling. and its low rumbling provided constant reassurance that their guardian was alert and ready. After 2 hours of steady descent, they reached the underground river system. The waterway stretched into darkness in both directions, its black surface reflecting their lights like a mirror. Strange formations jutted from the ceiling, and the sound of dripping water echoed endlessly through the caverns. "Which way?" Kim asked, consulting her portable navigation unit. Keth tested the air current with subtle movements of its head. Water flow moves toward ocean destination. River current will carry small vessels if constructed properly. "We build rafts?" Walsh asked incredulously. "From what materials?" Marcus examined the tunnel walls more carefully and noticed that the bioluminescent fungus grew in thick, fibrous mats. The fungus formations looked dense enough to provide buoyancy. "If we can harvest enough of it and bind it together." "Fungus growth is suitable for water travel," Keth confirmed. "But harvest activity may disturb tunnel dwellers. Must work quickly, quiet." The team spent the next several hours carefully removing sections of the glowing fungus and weaving them into makeshift rafts using salvaged cable from their equipment. The work was delicate, as too much disturbance could collapse entire formations and potentially alert whatever creatures called these tunnels home. They were nearly finished when Keth suddenly froze, its head tilted in a listening posture. "Tunnel dwellers approach. Large size, multiple individuals. How many?" Marcus whispered. "Sound patterns suggest pack structure. 8 to 10 individuals, moving through side tunnels toward this location." The team quickly finished their raft construction and prepared to launch into the underground river. As they pushed their improvised vessels into the dark water, Marcus caught sight of movement in the tunnel openings above them. The creatures that emerged were unlike anything in the xenobiological databases. They resembled massive spiders, but with crystalline exoskeletons that refracted their suit lights into prismatic rainbows. Each creature was the size of a small vehicle, with legs that could easily span the width of the tunnel. "Crystal spiders," Petrov breathed. "Those exoskeletons look like living diamond. They're attracted to our lights." Kim observed as the creatures began descending toward them with surprising speed. Keth positioned itself between the approaching creatures and the human team. "Crystal hunters feed on mineral deposits and energy sources. Suit power signatures attract their hunting instincts. Can we avoid them?" "Not while using light sources. Must choose between navigation ability and predator attention." Marcus made a quick decision. "Everyone reduce lighting to minimum emergency levels. Keth, can you guide us in near darkness?" "Keth can navigate by water sound and air movement, but river journey will be more dangerous without full vision." The team launched their rafts into the underground river just as the first crystal spider reached the water's edge. The creatures seemed confused by the sudden reduction in available light sources, but they began following along the riverbank, their crystalline legs creating musical chiming sounds as they moved. The journey downstream became a nightmare of blind navigation. Without adequate lighting, the humans had to trust completely in Keth's senses as their improvised rafts were carried by the current through a maze of underground waterways. The Drakmor called out warnings of low-hanging rock formations, sharp turns, and areas where the ceiling dropped dangerously close to the water surface. "Rapids ahead," Keth warned. "Water speed increases, rocks create turbulence patterns." The underground river suddenly accelerated, carrying their rafts through a series of cascading waterfalls and narrow channels carved through solid rock. Marcus gripped his makeshift vessel desperately as it bucked and spun through the churning water. Behind them, the crystal spiders had been joined by other tunnel dwellers. Marcus caught glimpses of creatures that looked like living stalactites, massive worm-like beings that moved through solid rock, and schools of bioluminescent fish that swarmed around anything that entered their territory. "How much further?" Kim called out over the sound of rushing water. "River flow suggests major junction ahead," Keth replied. "Underground system connects to surface streams near communication array location." The junction, when they reached it, was a vast underground cathedral with multiple waterways converging into a single massive river. The ceiling soared beyond the reach of their lights, and the sound of their passage echoed like whispers in an ancient tomb. But they were not alone in this space. As their rafts entered the central chamber, Marcus saw that the walls were covered with hundreds of crystal spiders, their exoskeletons creating a galaxy of reflected light. In the water around them, creatures moved with predatory grace, testing the newcomers for signs of weakness. "Friend Marcus," Keth said quietly. Tunnel dwellers are gathering for territorial challenge. This is their sacred space, and we are trespassers. Marcus looked around at the assembled creatures and realized that their greatest test lay not in reaching the communication array, but in convincing the ancient guardians of these tunnels that they meant no harm to the delicate ecosystem that had existed in darkness for countless millennia. What do they want? Proof that surface dwellers understand tunnel law, respect for ancient boundaries and sacred waters. As the current carried them toward the exit passage, Marcus understood that their survival would depend not on weapons or technology, but on Keth's ability to communicate with creatures that had never seen sunlight, and on their willingness to show the same respect for this underground realm that they had learned to show for the marsh stalkers above. The final challenge was about to begin, and failure would mean more than just missing their chance to call for help. It would mean joining the countless bones that Marcus was beginning to notice scattered along the underground riverbanks. The underground cathedral had fallen silent except for the gentle lapping of water against their makeshift rafts. Hundreds of crystal spiders clung to the cavern walls, their faceted exoskeletons creating a constellation of reflected light. In the dark water around them, massive shapes moved with ancient purpose, circling the intruders who had dared to enter their sacred realm. Marcus felt the weight of countless alien gazes upon him as Keth slowly rose to its full height on their shared raft. The Drakmor's four eyes surveyed the assembled creatures with careful respect, and when it spoke, the translation system struggled to convey the formal, ritualistic nature of its words. Ancient guardians of deep waters, Keth intoned, its voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Surface walker seeks passage right through sacred tunnels. Guardian friend requests audience wisdom from tunnel dwellers. The largest of the crystal spiders, a creature whose body alone was the size of a ground vehicle, descended from its position near the ceiling. Its movements were deliberate and ceremonial, each step creating harmonious tones that resonated through the crystalline formations. When it reached a position directly above their rafts, it spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Surface flesh brings light burning and noise-making to quiet places, the creature said through universal translation protocols. Ancient ways speak of surface dwellers who take without asking, destroy without understanding. Why should deep guardians grant passage right to lightbringers? Marcus started to respond, but Keth placed a gentle restraining appendage on his shoulder. This was Keth's negotiation to conduct, following protocols that were older than human civilization. Guardian friend acknowledges surface dweller transgressions against deep realm, Keth replied formally. But these surface flesh are different kind. They show respect learning, adapt thinking to new ways. Guardian friend offers life bond as guarantee of peaceful passage. A ripple of movement went through the assembled creatures. The crystal spider's multifaceted eyes seemed to focus more intently on Keth, and when it spoke again, its tone carried new weight. Drakmor kind speaks of life bond. Surface Guardian would stake existence force on behavior of lightbringers. Marcus felt his blood chill as he began to understand what Keth was offering. The life bond wasn't just a guarantee of good behavior. It was a literal pledge that if the humans violated the sacred laws of the tunnel realm, Keth would forfeit its own life as payment. Keth, no, Marcus whispered urgently. Don't do this. We'll find another way. But Keth's gaze remained fixed on the crystal spider. Guardian friend makes life bond pledge for safe passage of friend Marcus and pack companions. Ancient wisdom will judge surface dwellers by their actions proof, not history fears. The great crystal spider was silent for a long moment, consulting with its companions through harmonious tones that created music throughout the cavern. Finally it spoke again. Life bond is accepted. Passage right granted for surface dwellers under Drakmor Guardian protection, but tunnel laws must be observed absolute. No removal of crystal growth, no disturbance of sacred formations, no harm to deep dwellers. Ancient wisdom is acknowledged, Keth replied. Tunnel laws will be observed complete. As their rafts were allowed to continue toward the exit passage, Marcus struggled with the knowledge of what his friend had just sacrificed. Keth had literally bet its life on Marcus's ability to respect alien customs and navigate safely through a realm where humans had no natural place. The final stretch of their underground journey took them through increasingly narrow passages, where the ceiling pressed close overhead, and the walls seemed to pulse with their own internal light. Strange creatures watched their passage from alcoves and side chambers, but none challenged their right to travel through the ancient waterways. When they finally emerged into sunlight hours later, Marcus had to adjust his vision filters to cope with the brightness after so long in the tunnels. They found themselves at the edge of a vast ocean, with the planetary communication array visible on a cliff overlooking the water. "We made it," Kim breathed, her voice filled with relief and exhaustion. But their celebration was short-lived. As they made their way up the cliff path toward the communication array, Petrov's sensors detected incoming aircraft. "Zephyrian searchcraft," he reported grimly. "3 fighters approaching fast." Marcus realized that Admiral Scarth had anticipated their move. The Zephyrian commander had positioned forces near all critical infrastructure, waiting for them to make exactly this kind of desperate attempt. "How long do we need to get a message through?" Marcus asked. 10 minutes to establish a connection with the Colonial Authority relay network, Petrov replied. "Another 5 minutes to transmit our location and situation." "The fighters will be here in 3 minutes, Kim observed, watching the approaching aircraft through her scope. Marcus looked at Keith, seeing the same determination in those 4 amber eyes that had sustained them through every challenge they had faced together. "Can you buy us the time we need?" "Guardian friend can delay pursuit, but Zephyrian weapons are powerful, dangerous. Keth cannot guarantee survival outcome. I'm not asking you to die for us." Keth's response carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Friend Marcus, Guardian debt is not completed until Friend Marcus is safe secure." This is meaning purpose of Keth existence since rescue moment on crashed world. Before Marcus could protest further, Keth was moving toward the approaching fighters with the fluid grace of a natural predator. The Drakmoor's powerful legs carried it across the rocky terrain with incredible speed, positioning itself between the communication array and the incoming threat. The first Zephyrian fighter opened fire with plasma cannons, expecting to eliminate what appeared to be a single ground target. Instead, Keth demonstrated the full extent of Drakmoor combat capabilities. The creature's hide proved remarkably resistant to energy weapons, and its natural agility allowed it to dodge most of the incoming fire while using the terrain for cover. "Incredible," Walsh muttered as he watched Keth leap from rock to rock, drawing the fighter's attention away from the communication array. "It's actually holding off 3 armed aircraft." Marcus forced himself to focus on their mission, while his friend risked everything to protect them. "Petrov, get that transmitter online. Send everything we have about the Zephyrian war crimes, our location, and a request for immediate Colonial Authority intervention." As Petrov worked frantically to establish contact with the outside galaxy, Marcus watched Keith's desperate battle against overwhelming odds. The Drakmoor had managed to damage one fighter by hurling chunks of rock with incredible accuracy, but the other 2 aircraft were coordinating their attacks, trying to pin down their elusive target. "Connection established," Petrov announced, transmitting now. One of the Zephyrian fighters had positioned itself for a clear shot at Keth, who was momentarily exposed on a rocky outcropping. Marcus saw the plasma cannons charging for what would certainly be a killing blow. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed a salvaged energy rifle and opened fire on the aircraft. His shots were wildly inaccurate, but they served their purpose of drawing attention away from Keth at the critical moment. "Friend Marcus, take cover," Keth called out, but it was too late. The fighter pilot had identified Marcus as a target and was already adjusting his weapon systems. Time seemed to slow as Marcus saw the plasma blast heading directly toward him. He knew he couldn't dodge in time, and his environmental suit would provide no protection against that level of destructive energy. But Keth was already moving, covering the distance between them with a desperate leap that defied the laws of physics. The Drakmoor intercepted the plasma blast with its own body, taking the full force of the attack meant for Marcus. "Transmission complete," Petrov announced just as Keth collapsed onto the rocky ground, its purple hide blackened and smoking from the plasma strike. Marcus ran to his friend's side, dropping to his knees beside the wounded Drakmoor. Keth's breathing was labored, and its 4 eyes struggled to focus on Marcus's face. "Guardian debt is fulfilled," Keth whispered through the failing translation system. "Friend Marcus is safe protected." "You're not dying on me," Marcus said fiercely, activating his suit's emergency medical systems. "We've got help coming." "The Colonial Authority received our transmission." Keth's response was barely audible. "Life bond with tunnel dwellers is complete." Keth kept surface dweller promise sacred. Ancient guardians will remember Drakmor honor. As if summoned by Keth's words, the sky suddenly filled with the distinctive engine signatures of colonial authority warships. Admiral Scarth's fighters were already retreating, unwilling to face superior numbers and firepower. But Marcus barely noticed the arrival of their rescue. His attention was focused entirely on Keth, whose life force was ebbing away despite every medical intervention Marcus could provide. "Stay with me, my friend," Marcus pleaded. "You saved us all. You proved that honor and loyalty can transcend any boundary of species or origin." Keth's eyes managed to focus one final time on Marcus's face. Friend Marcus taught Keth that rescue choice creates bond eternal. Guardian friend learned meaning of true friendship from surface dweller who lifted metal beam. As the rescue ships landed and medical teams rushed to provide advanced treatment, Marcus held vigil beside the friend who had sacrificed everything to fulfill a debt of honor that went far beyond mere obligation. In saving the beast, Marcus had gained something far more precious than an ally. He had found a brother whose loyalty would echo through the galaxy, as an example of what was possible when two different species chose to see past their differences and embrace the common bonds that connected all intelligent life in the vast universe.